Yifeng wasn't just any young man, he was an internet-addicted otaku turned interdimensional spendthrift extraordinaire. Back on Earth, his biggest struggles were dodging pop-up ads and deciding whether to order ramen or pizza at 2 a.m. But all that changed when he accidentally got yeeted into the Xiantan continent. 1 second, he was loading a new MMORPG. The next, he was standing in a world where people punched mountains for fun and argued over whose sword sparkled brightest. Before he could even start freaking out, an avalanche of memories, not his, obviously flooded his brain. This place, it ran on one currency: martial prowess. The stronger you were, the higher your status. And everyone here was obsessed with joining sections. Big ones, small ones, even sects so new they didn't have a logo yet. Case in point, the Star Soul sect, which had only been around for half a month but already had a crowd frothing at the mouth to join. Yifeng, however, wasn't exactly impressed. No cheat abilities had kicked in yet, and he wasn't about to dive headfirst into this world's Hunger Games without an edge. His plan? Lay low, avoid unnecessary attention, and maybe find a quiet cave to wait this out. But just as he was about to ghost the crowd, 2 figures descended in front of the sect gates like characters stepping out of an anime. One of them, a woman with an aura so commanding it practically screamed, "Main character energy," stepped forward. This was Luo Qinxue, the Star Soul sect's leader, and wow. Yifeng couldn't help but stare. Forget influencers back on Earth, Luo Qinxue could have ruled the internet with her looks alone. But he quickly shook himself out of it. Pretty faces didn't pay the bills or, in this case, unlock cheat powers. Luo Qinxue didn't waste time with formalities. New disciples will be accepted without regard for qualifications, age, or cultivation level, she announced, her voice cutting through the crowd like a blade. Cheers erupted, excitement bubbling over. Finally, a sect that didn't discriminate. But before anyone could celebrate too much, she added the fine print. There's only one requirement. You must pay 10,000 low-grade spirit stones within an hour to join. Boom. Excitement killed. The crowd froze as if someone had just pulled the emergency brake on their enthusiasm. 10,000 spirit stones? That wasn't just steep, it was highway robbery. People started grumbling and backing away, muttering about scams and greed. Even Yifeng, who had seen some shady business practices back on Earth, couldn't believe it. Seriously? Greedy businesses exist in other dimensions too? He muttered. Just as he was about to slink away, it happened. A glowing window popped up in front of him, floating midair like something out of his favorite MMORPG. The words "Invincible Spendthrift System" blinked at him in bright, neon-like letters. His cheat had arrived. Yifeng blinked, then grinned. Wait, this is it? Already? I thought I'd have to grind for years before something like this kicked in. The system, apparently eager to prove its worth, laid out the rules. It was simple. Spend money, get stronger. Splurge like a maniac, and the system would handle the rest. Oh, and one cache daily spendthrift item would refresh every day, and Yifeng had to blow through it all before midnight. Fail, and points would be deducted. No refunds, no do-overs, no pressure, right? He pulled up the system's info panel, curiosity overtaking his skepticism. His combat level was hilariously low, could lose to a stiff breeze low. But today's spendthrift item? 10,000 Tier 9 Heavenly Thunder Talismans. He nearly choked. That was enough firepower to level a small city. And the system would provide infinite spirit stones to cover it? Jackpot. The system wasn't done. It hit him with his first task. Join the Star Soul sect. Yifeng groaned. Of course it would push him straight into the deep end. Her father had insisted, calling it character building or some such nonsense. She would have much preferred focusing on her cultivation and ascending out of this mundane realm altogether. Why? Because Luo Qinxue had a secret. She was the reincarnation of a holy woman from the higher realms, hellbent on revenge. Babysitting a sect? Hard pass. Back in the present, things weren't going as planned. Luo Qinxue stood before a crowd that refused to cough up the 10,000 low-grade spirit stones required to join. She waited and waited and waited. Not a single soul came forward. With a sigh, she turned to leave. As expected, who in this backwater place could afford it? And then, just as she was about to make her exit, a voice rang out, Sect leader, please wait. I wish to join. Luo Chinshue froze. Impossible. She turned, half expecting a prank, only to see a young man casually walking toward her. It was Yifeng. Yes, the same Yifeng who'd just called anyone willing to pay a fool. And now, he was about to be that fool. I understand the sect is in dire need of funds, he said, smiling. Allow me to contribute 100,000 low-grade spirit stones. Luo Chinshue blinked. Once, twice. Did she hear that right? 100,000? Here? In this remote corner of the world? She stared as Yifeng handed over a storage ring. With growing disbelief, she examined its contents. It really did contain 100,000 low-grade spirit stones. Not only that, but Yifeng's expression made it seem like this was no big deal. Are you sure? Luo Chinshue asked, half expecting him to take it all back. Our sect doesn't even have a proper place to stay. Yifeng waved off her concerns. It's fine. I've got plenty of money. I'll even help build the sect. Luo Chinshue felt an aneurysm coming on. She tried to dissuade him further, warning him about the lack of resources and general hardships of joining. But Yifeng? He wasn't bothered. With his spendthrift system, resources were the least of his concerns. Don't worry, sect leader, he said brightly. I'll provide everything we need. Luo Chinshue's blood pressure spiked. She really didn't want him in her sect. But a promise was a promise. Begrudgingly, she relented. Fine, you can join, she snapped. But I won't be instructing you. You'll have to figure everything out yourself. To her surprise, Yifeng didn't even flinch. Oh, that's perfect, he said, grinning. I don't need anything. Inside, he was ecstatic. No interference. Unlimited freedom to complete his spendthrift quests. Best deal ever. Luo Chinshue was this close to spitting blood. She couldn't fathom why this guy would happily drop 100,000 spirit stones and act like he'd just won the lottery. At one point, she even considered drawing her weapon and ending this madness right there. But her aide, the ever-level-headed old bai, stopped her. Young miss, he said gently. We need at least one disciple for the sect. Defeated, Luo Chinshue accepted Yifeng into the sect, though her resentment simmered. Yifeng, meanwhile, completed his first system task, earning a neat 200 spendthrift points. Now eager for more, he asked the system about additional tasks. To his delight, the system revealed that any spendthrift actions could earn points, even outside specific missions. The gears in his mind began to turn. Moments later, Yifeng approached Luo Chinshue again. Sect leader, he began. Since I'm the only disciple, doesn't that technically make me your direct disciple? Luo Chinshue's patience was hanging by a thread. Absolutely not, she snapped. You're lucky I even let you join. Unfazed, Yifeng countered with a grin. What if I paid for the position? Luo Chinshue's jaw dropped. This guy. After regaining her composure, she smirked. All right, she said, naming an absurd price. 100,000 high-grade spirit stones. If you can produce that, I'll consider it. She fully expected him to balk. After all, even third-rate sects didn't have access to that kind of wealth. But Yifeng? He didn't even blink. That's it? He asked, genuinely surprised. To prove his sincerity, he handed over a storage ring containing a whopping 500,000 high-grade spirit stones. Luo Chinshue felt her soul leave her body. Who is this lunatic? The system immediately rewarded Yifeng another 200 spendthrift points, and he was thrilled. Luo Chinshue, on the other hand, was questioning every decision that had led her to this moment. With resources like that, Yifeng could have been revered as an ancestor in any third-rate sect. But no, he chose hers. Stuck with her own words, Luo Chinshue begrudgingly declared Yifeng her main direct disciple. As a token of this bizarre arrangement, she handed him the mystic azure sword, a treasure worthy of a true disciple. Inside, she wanted to bury herself in shame. The dignified maiden of the infinite holy ground had just sold a direct disciple position like it was a clearance sale. Yifeng, meanwhile, was thrilled, with resources flowing freely and his spendthrift system in full swing. Unfortunately for Yifeng, the system wasn't impressed. A true spendthrift, it chided, doesn't accept free handouts. Cue the punishment. a 20-point deduction from his hard-earned spendthrift points. If he returned the sword within an hour, he could get his points back. But still Yifang was livid. This system is way too nitpicky. Grumbling to himself, Yifang decided he had no choice. He knelt down dramatically, holding the mystic azure sword with both hands, and presented it back to Luo Qinxue like he was surrendering Excalibur. "What are you doing?" Luo Qinxue asked, completely baffled. "I can't accept this," Yifang said with way too much sincerity. "I'd rather spend money than take something for free." Luo Qinshue's face turned red with rage. She snatched the sword back and snapped, "You think money can solve everything? If you don't appreciate my goodwill, then fine. Let it be." Storming off, she fumed inwardly. What kind of disciple is this? That sword was a 7th order spirit tool, a treasure of the sect, and he had the audacity to return it. Her frustration peaked as she flew away, her face full of resentment. Meanwhile, Yifang was left scratching his head. Old Bai is the sect master. Not very bright? She just missed out on making some money. Old Bai nearly fainted. "Shoo, if the sect leader hears you, it'll be the end of us." Privately, Old Bai was just as confused. How could someone like Yifang ordinary, mortal Yifang be this absurdly wealthy? Still, he couldn't deny that Yifang's arrival was shaking things up. Luo Chunxue had been stuck in her cultivation for ages. But now, thanks to Yifang's madness, her mindset was starting to shift. Maybe this kid really is the key to breaking the stalemate. Deciding to avoid any more disasters, Old Bai hurriedly dragged Yifang back to the sect. Bored out of his mind during the flight, Yifang passed the time by counting birds. At one point, he even let a bird nest on his head. But then something clicked. "Hey, system," he asked, "how do I use my spendthrift points?" A glowing personal info panel popped up in front of him. Yifang's total: 400 spendthrift points, a solid haul after today's nonsense. He hadn't even touched the day's earnings yet. "Man, cheats are the best," Yifang muttered, admiring the panel. The system explained the realms, breaking them down from Spirit Sea all the way to the terrifying-sounding Tribulation Crossing realm. Each upgrade cost more points than the last, multiplying tenfold with every level. Yifang groaned as he did the math. "This is highway robbery," he complained. "Why does it get so expensive so fast?" Curious, he opened the Spendthrift Mall. A series of treasure containers appeared, each costing 100 spendthrift points to open. The system helpfully pointed out that there was an extremely low chance of drawing high-tier rewards. Yifang considered it. Sure, it was pricey, but if he lucked out, it could be worth it. Then again, what was he even supposed to do with a high-tier treasure at this stage? The system chimed in again. For example, if you crush a 9th-grade elixir in front of an alchemist, that counts as a spendthrift action. Yifang grinned. Now that sounds fun. But he paused. As a mortal, flaunting his wealth in front of cultivators was a great way to get himself obliterated. For now, he'd play it safe. Spending 90 points, Yifang upgraded his strength to the 9th level of the Spirit Sea realm. The sudden breakthrough made Old Bai whip around in shock. "What is this kid doing now?" Old Bai muttered. He slowed the flying sword and probed Yifang's spiritual energy. His jaw dropped. "He's forming his Spirit Sea. During flight?" Yifang, deep in his consciousness, frowned. Why is this taking so long? More and more spiritual energy poured into him as he wondered why the process was dragging. Old Bai, meanwhile, was losing his mind. Is he breaking through even further? What kind of monster is this? Normally, forming the Spirit Sea required a tranquil environment and a stockpile of elixirs. Yifang was doing it casually, mid-air, with zero assistance. A moment later, Old Bai's jaw practically hit the floor as Yifang shot from the 1st level of the Spirit Sea realm to the peak of the 9th level. All in one go. When Yifang finally woke up, he stretched and looked mildly annoyed. "Old Bai, it took me 10 minutes to break through 9 levels. Won't the sect master think I'm a failure?" Old Bai stared at him, speechless. Is this kid bragging? He felt a pang of existential despair. Back in his day, it had taken him 8 months to climb the same levels, even with abundant resources. When Old Bai examined Yifang again, he discovered something even more bizarre. No spiritual roots. Yet Yifang's Spirit Sea was vast, like an endless ocean. At this point, Old Bai didn't know what to think. He decided it was best to let Luo Chinxue figure this one out. Back at the Star Soul sect, Old Bai relayed everything to Luo Chinxue, including the size of Yifang's spirit sea, 20 times larger than hers, and his lack of spiritual roots. Luo Chinxue's face went pale as she probed him herself. This shouldn't even be possible, she muttered. Without spiritual roots, how did you break through? Before Yifang could respond, mocking laughter echoed from outside. The Full Moon sect had arrived, their leader requesting an audience. What now? Luo Chinxue grumbled, already fed up. She stormed out to meet them. The Full Moon sect's leader sneered. I heard your sect charges 10,000 low-grade spirit stones to join. Intriguing. We came to see for ourselves. Shall we have a match? Luo Chinxue's fury skyrocketed. Today had already been a lot, and now this? But then, she had a thought. If Yifang got beaten up, maybe he'd leave. Fine, she said, barely suppressing her smirk. Yifang, you take the challenge. Yifang blinked. Can I use talismans? Sure, she replied, grinning. Yifang stepped forward and casually summoned a mountain of heavenly thunder talismans, each radiating 9th grade energy. The Full Moon sect froze. What the how does he have so many? Yifang didn't wait. Gleefully, he unleashed the talismans, turning the battlefield into a symphony of explosions. The disciples of the Full Moon sect fled in terror, screaming for their master to retreat. Even Luo Chinxue, watching the chaos, was utterly speechless. This kid, she muttered, rubbing her temples. This is going to be a long journey. How did this kid get so rich? Luo Chinxue had originally assumed Yifang would get his arrogant self beaten in the challenge and leave the sect on his own. But after watching him gleefully bombard the Full Moon sect disciples into oblivion for hours, she had to admit, that was looking unlikely. Yifang, of course, was having the time of his life. He threw talismans like a kid in a candy store, his face practically glowing with smugness. The elderly sect leader, now sweating bullets, quickly miscalculated the situation. He assumed the mountain of talismans Yifang was tossing around came from the Star Soul sect's stash. No wonder they charged 10,000 spirit stones to join. Their resources are insane. Realizing he'd bitten off more than he could chew, the old man prepared to retreat with his disciples. Luo Chinxue, however, wasn't about to let him slink away unscathed. This was her moment to shine. With a graceful step forward, she revealed her strength. The original spirit realm. The old man froze, utterly dumbfounded. Even the Full Moon sect's leader was only at the divine repository realm, and here was Luo Chinxue, casually standing leagues above him. She could obliterate their entire sect if she wanted. Though she had no intention of wiping them out completely, she did demand a little compensation. Leave an arm behind, or you lose your lives, she said coldly. The Full Moon sect disciples turned pale. They had no choice but to comply. Once their punishment was carried out, Luo Chinxue dismissed them with a flick of her sleeve. Watching this, Yifang gulped. She's terrifying. For the first time, he realized his beautiful master might also be a ruthless executioner. Luo Chinxue, maintaining her composure on the outside, turned to him. Retrieve the leftover talismans, she said flatly. Internally, though, she felt helpless. Even after all this, she hadn't managed to scare him off. Yifang, as oblivious as ever, had a request. Master, I still have over 9,000 talismans left. I can't throw them all by myself. Can you help me? Luo Chinxue froze. Is this kid for real? She opened her mouth to refuse but then thought better of it. Why bother arguing? With a resigned sigh, she agreed, curious to see how long he could keep up this wasteful act. And so, the two of them began tossing heavenly thunder talismans side by side. Each throw erupted into an explosion that lit up the night like fireworks. Watching the chaos, Luo Chinxue felt a flicker of nostalgia. A memory surfaced. Her junior sister from her previous life once dragged her into setting off fireworks together. If we can't enjoy ourselves to the fullest, isn't life just painful? She had said. Luo Chinxue had rolled her eyes back then, but now, she had to admit, her junior sister might have been onto something. Meanwhile, back at the Star Soul sect, Old Bai was trying to get some sleep when the non-stop explosions jolted him awake. Groggy and annoyed, he thought they were under attack. He hurriedly got dressed and rushed outside, only to freeze in shock. Yifeng and Luo Qinxue were throwing talismans. By now, even Luo Qinxue had succumbed to the madness, casually tossing talismans as if they were scraps of paper. When Old Bai demanded to know what was going on, Luo Qinxue waved him off. "We're just disposing of them," she said, completely deadpan. "Disposing?" Old Bai roared, his voice cracked with fury. "Each of those talismans costs 1,000 low-grade spirit stones. Even the wealthiest sects can't afford to waste resources like this. And you, young lady, what's gotten into you?" Yifeng, unfazed by Old Bai's tirade, calmly pulled out a storage ring. "Old Bai, I'm sorry for disturbing your sleep. Here's 100,000 high-grade spirit stones for some tonics." Old Bai blinked. Then, without a word, he tore off his robe, revealing muscles that rivaled a bodybuilder's. "Move aside," he barked, grabbing a handful of talismans. The speed at which he began tossing them left even Yifeng speechless. Indeed, money makes the world go round. A system notification appeared. "Congratulations, host. You've earned 100 wasteful points." Yifeng smirked. So even this counted as wasteful behavior? Noted. Next time, he'd recruit Old Bai for more extravagant spending sprees. By the time they finished, Old Bai was slumped on the ground, panting like he'd run a marathon. "If there's any manual labor in the future," he wheezed, "call me. I might be old, but I'm still strong." Luo Qinxue watched all of this silently. The Star Soul sect is doomed, she thought. Then, with a smirk, she teased Old Bai. "You're one of the 8 senior elders of the Star Extreme sect, and you sold yourself for a mere 100,000 spirit stones?" Old Bai sniffed. "It's not about the spirit stones. It's about dignity." The system chimed again, awarding Yifeng 1,000 wasteful points. He checked his panel and realized he now had enough to hit the 9th level of the Qi activation realm. Perfect. With a few hundred points left over, he could even try his luck at the Spendthrift Mall. But there was still one problem. The Star Soul sect only had 3 members. Relying solely on Old Bai for extravagant spending wouldn't cut it. "What I need is more disciples," Yifeng thought. More disciples meant faster resource consumption, which meant faster point accumulation. As if on cue, a young man appeared at the entrance. "Does your sect still accept new disciples?" Yifeng's face lit up. Perfect timing. The new arrival, however, hesitated the moment he stepped inside. The ground was covered in craters. An old man was collapsed and wheezing, and a woman stood off to the side, silently glaring. The vibe was off. Is this the Star Soul sect?" the young man asked nervously. "Yes, we're still recruiting. To join, you just need to contribute 100,000 low-grade spirit stones. But if you can shell out 100,000 high-grade spirit stones, you can become the sect master's direct disciple." Yifeng then puffed out his chest. "By the way, I'm Yifeng, the eldest disciple of the sect and the personal disciple of the sect master." Wolfong froze, dumbfounded. He blinked at Yifeng, then blinked again, unsure if this guy was actually serious. Meanwhile, Yifeng stared back at him with anticipation, silently hoping Wolfong would admit he didn't have the money. That way, Yifeng could sponsor his entry and rack up some spendthrift points. Unfortunately, the system had other ideas. "Host, sponsoring others is not justifiable unless you provide a reasonable explanation." Yifeng sighed, quickly making something up. "We get along, all right? The moment I saw him, I just knew. He's like a brother to me, a brother from another mother. Is it wrong to spend a little on my brother?" To his surprise, the system actually approved. But before Yifeng could act on his plans, Wolfong began inching away. This sect seemed sketchy, too focused on money to be trustworthy. "Oh no, you don't," Yifeng thought. He darted forward and caught Wolfong in a chokehold, locking him in place. Wolfong struggled until suddenly, he received a telepathic message from his grandfather. "Stay in this sect. Once I've settled my affairs, I'll come for you." With a groan of defeat, she decided to test the new recruit's commitment. "Fine, but you'll need to hand over 10,000 low-grade spirit stones to join." She fully expected this would scare Wolfong away. No one in their right mind would cough up that kind of money so easily. To her shock, Wolfong reached into his storage ring and handed over the exact amount. "I'd like to join," he said plainly. Luo Chinshue stared at him, utterly stunned. Moments ago, he'd looked ready to sprint for the hills. Now he was acting like a loyal recruit. Have I been secluded for so long that this is now the trend? Left with no choice, she accepted Wolfong into the sect, though she made it clear she wouldn't offer him any guidance. "You'll cultivate on your own," she said firmly, fully expecting him to quit within a week. But Wolfong wasn't fazed. "That's fine," he replied. "My grandfather already provided me with everything I need for my primary cultivation." Luo Chinshue froze, her face turning red with rage. She was so furious she nearly spat blood. "Why does everyone insist on playing the fool?" Old Bai chuckled in the background. "Congratulations, Mississippi. Another disciple." Luo Chinshue shot him a murderous glare. She left in a huff, muttering about how this sect was going to drive her insane. Later, Yifeng struck up a conversation with Wolfong, learning his full name and promptly promoting him to inner sect disciple on the spot. "Senior," Wolfong muttered, rubbing his temple. "This guy is unreliable and not too bright. How am I supposed to survive here?" But then Yifeng's eyes landed on something extraordinary. An alchemy furnace in Wolfang's room. "Are you an alchemist?" he asked. Puffing out his chest, Wolfong raised 3 fingers. "I'm a 3rd-grade alchemist. In this world, roles like alchemists, talisman masters, and artifact refiners were highly revered. Even a low-grade alchemist could earn massive respect, and a 3rd-grade alchemist, practically royalty." In his mind, Wolfong already imagined Yifeng begging him to refine pills. He even imagined revealing his cultivation level, the 9th layer of the merging spirit realm, and watching Yifeng's jaw drop. Back to reality. Yifeng's reaction to Wolfang's big reveal was a casual, "Oh." Wolfong blinked. "That's it? No praise? No astonishment?" Anyway, Yifeng interrupted. "Which 3rd-grade spiritual herbs are rare?" Caught off guard, Wolfong thought for a moment. "Bamboo demongrass, white spirit flower, purple thunder fruit, and a few others. Even 9th-grade alchemists rarely encounter them." Yifeng nodded thoughtfully. Moments later, he accessed the system and spent 1,200 spendthrift points opening jars. In no time, he'd acquired 2 bamboo demongrass, 1 white spirit flower, and 3 purple thunder fruit. Frozen in place, Yifeng stared at his haul. Wolfong noticed his senior's dazed expression and assumed he was ignorant about alchemy. "Don't worry, senior," he said kindly. "It's normal for non-alchemists not to recognize rare herbs." Then Yifeng bolted out of the room, mumbling something about water. Wolfong chuckled. What an unpredictable guy. Moments later, Yifeng returned with a pot of soup. Wolfang's smile vanished as he spotted rare herbs floating in the broth. He fished one out, examining it with shaking hands. It was the real deal. "Brother, these are priceless treasures. What are you doing?" Before he could react, Yifeng snatched the herbs back. "I heard brewing spiritual herbs is good for cultivation," Yifeng said nonchalantly. "But I guess I was wrong." Then, without hesitation, Yifeng crushed the herbs under his foot, grinding them into the floor for good measure. "Stop!" Wolfong lunged, but it was too late. The herbs were gone, completely obliterated. Wolfong felt his soul leave his body. Even grandfather has never seen such rare herbs, and this lunatic just destroyed them. Meanwhile, Yifeng received a notification. "Congratulations, host. You've earned 1,500 spendthrift points." Smiling, he patted Wolfong on the shoulder. "It's okay. My bad for not recognizing them. Rest up, Junior. I'll be taking my leave." Returning to his room, Yifeng dumped the remaining herbs into a pot for a luxurious foot soak. He sighed contentedly, until he noticed his feet turning black. Wolfong barged in moments later, yelling about toxins. "Senior, you combined bamboo demongrass and purple thunder fruit. That's poisonous." Meanwhile, the system chimed happily in Yifeng's head. "Congratulations, host. Another wasteful success. Awarded 1,500 spending points." Yifeng's panic instantly turned to relief. Even better, the system provided a solution for detoxifying his feet. 1,000 spending points to cleanse the toxins completely. He let out a long breath. Good, no harm done. Actually, this wasteful method was even better than I thought. Discreetly, Yifeng spent the points to cleanse himself. His feet immediately returned to their normal color. Then, with zero hesitation, he dipped his feet back into the tub for round 2. Wolfang's jaw hit the floor. Why you're doing it again? This water is literally toxic. Relax, Yifeng said, waving him off. The system can detoxify me anytime. Come on, Junior, join me. There's room for 2. He grinned and patted the edge of the tub. It's a medicinal bath. Feels amazing. I'll detox you too if anything happens. Wolfang looked at him like he'd lost his mind. You want me to soak in toxic water? He shook his head in disbelief and muttered something about losing brain cells just by standing there. Finally, he turned to leave, unable to watch any longer. As he walked away, Wolfang considered informing the sect leader about what had happened. But after some thought, he decided against it. I'm not a snitch, he told himself, sighing deeply. Still, he couldn't shake the helpless feeling that his senior was going to destroy the sect one reckless act at a time. Meanwhile, Yifeng finished his luxurious soak, detoxified again using the system, and decided to channel his newfound energy into cultivating. Spending 900 spending points, he upgraded his cultivation to the 9th level of the Qi activation realm. Elsewhere in the main hall, Luo Qinxue was discussing Yifeng's peculiarities with Old Bai. Do you have any idea where he came from? She asked, pinching the bridge of her nose. Not yet, Old Bai admitted, stroking his beard. But I believe time will reveal the truth. What truly concerned Old Bai was something else. Yifeng's ability to throw the young Mrs. Emotions into chaos. Every time Luo Qinxue thought about him, she'd grit her teeth so hard it was a miracle she hadn't cracked them. As they spoke, an immense surge of spiritual energy erupted from the disciples' quarters, causing both of them to pause. Luo Qinxue turned to Old Bai with a sharp look. It's him again, isn't it? Old Bai frowned, finding the phenomenon strangely familiar. It can't be, he murmured. He just reached the peak of the Spirit Sea realm. Breaking through again so soon would defy all logic. And yet, this was Yifeng. Logic didn't seem to apply. Moments later, they both sensed the unmistakable aura of the Qi activation realm. But it didn't stop there. Yifeng's energy kept surging, and in the blink of an eye, he advanced from the 1st level of the Qi activation realm to the 9th level. Luo Qinxue's eyes widened in disbelief. Old Bai, am I hallucinating? Or did he just break through 9 levels in 5 minutes? Old Bai was equally stunned. This cultivation speed, it's unheard of. He silently cheered for Yifeng, hoping he could even reach the merging spirit realm. But beside him, Luo Qinxue looked increasingly disheartened. No wonder he was so confident before, she muttered bitterly. He really doesn't need my guidance. At this rate, he might surpass me as sect leader in a few days. Old Bai coughed awkwardly, realizing he might have praised Yifeng a little too much earlier. That's unlikely, young miss, he said hastily. Advancing in the higher realms is much harder. It requires opportunities, resources, and elixirs. For Yifeng to catch up to you, there's still a long way to go. Privately, though, Old Bai wasn't so sure. This kid might actually surpass her. Meanwhile, in his room, Wolfang sat in stunned silence. This is my unreliable senior brother? He'd broken through 9 levels in a single breath. No wonder his grandfather had insisted he stay. The next day, Yifeng woke up refreshed and ready for more mischief. Checking the system, he found today's spending product, 10,000 Tier 3 9-pattern clear mysterious pills. But a glance at his spending points 310 filled him with regret. He'd wasted 2,000 points yesterday detoxifying his feet. I was too flamboyant. Should have kept it low-key, he thought with a sigh. Still, an idea struck him. These pills, they'd be perfect for annoying Junior. Yifeng grinned, imagining Wolfang's reaction. Somewhere across the sect, Wolfang sneezed, a bad feeling creeping over him. Yifeng headed to Wolfang's residence but found it empty. Did he run away? Yifeng wondered aloud. Just then, Old Bai appeared and explained that Wolfong and Luo Chinshue had gone to a nearby town to buy spiritual herbs. Perfect, Feng exclaimed. Take me with you, Old Bai. I want to see the town too. Old Bai agreed and they set off. But to Feng's dismay, the nearest town required a 5-hour flight. Bored out of his mind mid-flight, Feng began chatting with Old Bai. Hey, what's the point of bamboo demon grass, white spirit flower, and purple thunder fruit anyway? He asked innocently. Old Bai raised an eyebrow, sensing danger in the question. Why are you asking? Oh, no reason, Feng said with a grin. Old Bai sighed. This was going to be a long flight. Old Bai's flying sword came to an abrupt halt midair. He turned to Feng with wide, disbelieving eyes. You used those spiritual herbs for a foot soak? Feng grinned mischievously. Exactly. You should try it sometime, it's absolutely invigorating. Old Bai's jaw hung open as if he'd just heard the most blasphemous statement of his life. Precious third-tier spiritual herbs so rare that even alchemists drooled over them turned into glorified bath salts? He couldn't decide whether to faint or curry favor with Feng. Better keep this kid happy, Old Bai thought. Maybe he'll share next time. After several more hours of travel, they finally reached the nearby town. Old Bai, clearly eager to ditch Feng, landed first. I have some business to attend to, he said hurriedly, already inching away. Try not to cause trouble. We'll meet up later. Feng waved dismissively. Sure. Go hang out with your old buddies. Why'd you even bring me along if you're just going to ditch me? Old Bai muttered something inaudible and took off, feeling relieved. Now I can enjoy some peace. Left to his own devices, Feng wandered through the town with curiosity practically glowing on his face. He was like a kid in a candy store peeking into shops, marveling at items he didn't understand, and even nearly walking into a brothel. Maybe later, he muttered. Eventually, he stumbled upon the Tanya auction house, his eyes lighting up with glee. Time to splurge. Still, a sliver of concern crept in. If he exposed his wealth too recklessly, wouldn't he attract trouble? Thankfully, the system reassured him with a notification. Host, in the event of a life-threatening crisis, the Divine Tycoon's guard will activate to eliminate the threat. However, it will only target enemies directly endangering the host. Feng burst out laughing. Truly an unbeatable spendthrift system. Now I can splurge without fear. With that, he walked into the auction house like he owned the place. Thanks for watching, guys. Comment Flamingo and subscribe for the next part. Upon entering, Feng informed the attendant that he had some elixirs to auction off. He was quickly introduced to Chao Anshan, a 6th-tier alchemist who looked about as old as dust. Chao gave Feng a dismissive glance before inspecting the pill Feng handed him. A 9-striped, clear, mysterious pill. Feng tilted his head. Is that good? Chao's hands trembled as he held the pill like it was a priceless artifact. Extremely good. You don't understand, 3rd-tier elixirs are notoriously difficult to refine. A mistake in the process ruins the whole batch. Most pills barely reach 6 or 7 stripes, and an 8-striped pill is already considered a treasure. But a 9-striped pill? This is the pinnacle of refinement. Feng blinked. Cool. So, how much is it worth? Chao paused, clearly annoyed at Feng's lack of appreciation. Well, he began, his tone heavy with condescension. A regular 3rd-tier pill goes for around 100,000 low-tier spirit stones. But this value is hard to estimate. Only an auction can determine its true worth. Feng's jaw dropped. Wait, this broken pill is worth 100,000 spirit stones? Chao choked. Broken? This is a masterpiece. What do you mean, broken? Ignoring Chao's indignation, Feng handed him another pill. Here, add this one to the afternoon auction too. I'll collect the money later. Chao looked like he might combust from frustration, but he took the pills anyway. From a distance, he could hear Feng muttering to himself. I wonder which fool would spend so much on a pill. Chao nearly fell over. Wouldn't that make you the fool, since you're the one selling them? Leaving the auction house, Feng popped a clear, mysterious pill into his mouth and casually strolled through town. With 10,000 pills to get through today, he figured he might as well snack on them like candy. That's when he spotted a scruffy stray dog limping in an alley. The poor thing looked miserable, skinny, dirty, and pitiful. Ifeng's heart melted. "You're coming with me, little buddy," he said, tossing it a giant bone. Naming the dog Little Yellow, Ifeng quickly concocted a plan. With only a handful of people in the sect, Luo Qinxue, old by Wolfong, and himself, he needed more help wasting resources. Little Yellow was the perfect addition to his wastrel squad. The dog happily devouring pills would save him time. But first, Little Yellow needed a bath. Ifeng took the dog to a nearby restaurant and demanded a premium room for the occasion. However, the waiter refused. "Sir, we don't allow dogs inside." Ifeng raised an eyebrow. "I didn't ask for your opinion. How much?" The waiter's expression didn't budge. No amount of money dash before he could finish. Ifeng was still annoyed. He'd paid 10 times the cost of the room, but the system hadn't counted it as wasteful behavior. "Seriously? I just wasted a fortune." Little Yellow, meanwhile, wagged its tail obliviously as hot water was brought in. Once the dog was sparkling clean, Ifeng smiled. "All right, Little Yellow, time to get to work." He handed the dog a pill. Without hesitation, Little Yellow gulped it down, happily wagging its tail. Ifeng chuckled. "Good boy, we'll get through these pills in no time." Unbeknownst to Little Yellow, it was about to suffer greatly. But for now, the dog enjoyed its happy moments, blissfully unaware of the chaos that came with being Ifeng's pet. Ifeng strolled back into his room, feeling refreshed after his outing. He glanced at Little Yellow, who was sprawled on the floor, snoring away like it owned the place. "You're really slacking," Ifeng muttered, poking the dog with his foot. "You've only eaten, 2,000 pills? And now you're being lazy." Little Yellow stirred and let out a protesting howl, as if to say, "I can't eat another bite." Ifeng sighed dramatically. "Fine, I'll join you." He flopped down beside the dog, exhausted from his day of being a wasteful tycoon. As they both dozed off, something incredible began to happen. The thousands of pills Little Yellow had consumed were transforming the scruffy stray into something extraordinary, a mythical beast in the making. Elsewhere, Old Bai was having a leisurely chat with an old friend, Old Xia, who looked particularly smug. "Do you know what just came through the auction branch?" Old Xia asked, his voice dripping with pride. "2 special, 3rd-tier clear, mysterious pills. Go on. Guess how many stripes they have." Old Bai rolled his eyes. "You've been fussing about this all morning." "Fine. 7 stripes, right? Who refined them?" Old Xia held up 9 fingers. 9 stripes, 2 of them, practically perfect, just shy of a 10-striped pill. Old Bai's brows shot up. 9 stripes? Who brought them in? "That's the thing," Old Xia said, shrugging. "No name, no background. Just a young man who didn't even seem to care about them." Connecting the dots, Old Bai froze. A young man who didn't care about precious 9-striped pills? This had to be Ifeng. He sighed, already feeling a headache coming on. "Let's visit this young man," Old Bai said. Old Xia frowned. "What's so special about your lady's disciple?" "You'll see," Old Bai replied cryptically. Meanwhile, at the Tanya auction house, Luo Qinxue had shown up for the afternoon auction. She spotted the 2 9-striped clear mysterious pills immediately, their brilliance dazzling even from a distance. She had no idea where they had come from, but she had to have them. Her plan? Use the pills to regain some authority in front of Ifeng and Wolfong. That arrogant disciple definitely doesn't have anything this rare. Once he sees me with these, he'll have to worship me. Luo Qinxue chuckled to herself, imagining the smug look she'd give Ifeng when she flaunted the pills. Back at Ifeng's room, Old Bai and Old Xia arrived, only to find the door locked. "Could he be asleep?" Old Xia asked. Old Bai scowled. A qualified cultivator shouldn't waste time sleeping. With zero hesitation, he kicked the door open. The scene inside left both men speechless. The table was piled high with 9-striped clear mysterious pills, and the floor was littered with the remnants of even more pills. In the middle of it all, Ifeng and Little Yellow were lazily sprawled out, surrounded by what looked like the aftermath of an alchemical hurricane. Ifeng groggily opened his eyes at the noise. "Old Bai, what are you doing here? Finished your tasks already?" He yawned, then noticed Little Yellow still lounging on the ground. "You silly dog," Ifeng scolded. Always sleeping. Why haven't you finished the pills yet? To everyone's shock, Little Yellow let out a huff of pure disdain and kicked one of the pills away with its paw. Old Xia nearly fainted on the spot. This is a 9-striped, clear, mysterious pill. It's priceless. And this dog, it's rejecting it. Old Bai, peering closely at Little Yellow, stroked his chin. There's something strange about this dog. Look at the spiritual energy it's absorbing. It's transforming into a beast. No impurities in its body. Quite remarkable. Trying to hold himself together, Old Xia turned to Yifeng. How many of these pills have you fed this dog? Yifeng thought for a moment. Not many. Maybe about 2,000. Old Xia spat out a mouthful of tea he hadn't even been drinking. Grabbing Old Bai by the collar, he yelled, 2,000! Do you realize how precious these pills are? And you let this happen. Aren't you supposed to be supervising him? Old Bai shrugged. What can I do? The kid's too rich. When our master and junior brother Wolfong going to show up? I need reinforcements. Halfway through his chewing, Old Bai paused, glancing at Yifeng. The 2 clear, mysterious pills that sold at the Tanya auction house, they were yours, weren't they? Yifeng smirked. Yep. I threw those mediocre pills in just to see who'd be foolish enough to buy them. Old Xia nearly spat out the pill he was chewing. Mediocre. A single one of those pills sold for 1 million low-grade spirit stones. And you put them up for auction just to mock the buyer? Meanwhile, Luo Chinchue was speeding toward Yifeng's room, clutching the 2 auctioned pills with pride. She couldn't wait to flaunt them in front of Yifeng. No matter how rich you are, there's no way you could get your hands on something this rare. Wolfong, running beside her, was practically glowing with excitement. Master, I can't believe you spent so much for us. You're amazing. When they finally reached Yifeng's door, Wolfong froze. His wide eyes locked onto the chaotic scene inside, and his trembling hand pointed toward it. Luo Chinchue, still smug, glanced past him and her expression instantly crumbled. Inside, Yifeng, Old Bai, Old Xia, and Little Yellow were all eating pills. Not just any pills, but 9-striped, clear, mysterious pills. There were scattered pill boxes on the ground, a massive pile on the table, and a general aura of excess that made her head spin. She stared at the chaos, her knuckles white from gripping the auctioned pills. Wait, don't tell me, Wolfong stammered. Master, what's wrong? It was only then that the group inside noticed the newcomers. Old Bai's eyes darted to the boxes in Luo Chinchue's hands, and realization dawned. He elbowed Old Xia. Those are the pills from the auction, aren't they? Old Xia sighed, nodding. They are. Luo Chinchue's mind raced. She had spent a fortune bidding for the pills, thinking they were a rare treasure, only to find out they'd been casually thrown into the auction by her own disciple. The absurdity of it all hit her like a ton of bricks. She laughed first softly, then louder, until she was practically howling. Isn't it funny, Old Bai? She asked, still laughing through gritted teeth. Old Bai winced, unsure how to respond. You did it for their sake, sect leader. Nothing wrong with that. Thankfully, Wolfong broke the tension. Senior brother, he said, practically bouncing. Can I eat the pills too? I want to join the pill gorging. Old Bai and Old Xia lit up with relief. Yes, please, they cried in unison, eager to hand over the burden. Feng grinned. Eat as many as you want, Junior. Wolfong didn't need any more encouragement. Drooling with anticipation, he dove toward the pile, grabbing fistfuls of pills like a kid in a candy store. But as he did, one pill fell from the edge of the table and landed near Little Yellow. Wolfong froze. No, that's a 9-striped, clear, mysterious pill. Don't let the dog dash too late. Little Yellow, already stuffed, lazily kicked the pill away, its expression one of pure disdain. Wolfong gawked, completely stunned. It just kicked it away? Old Xia, unable to take it anymore, turned to Luo Chinchue. Sect leader Luo, you need to manage him. Over 2,000 of these pills wasted on a dog. It's madness. Feng shrugged. What can I say? The dog eats faster than humans. Wolfong, clutching his chest, thought bitterly, even the dog is more fortunate than me. An hour later, Old Bai, Old Xia, and Wolfong were sprawled on the floor, groaning. Their bellies were so full they couldn't move. Yifeng looked at the table, still piled with over 2,000 pills, and frowned. Turning to Luo Chinxue, he gave her his best, pleading look. "Master, please. I need your help." Luo Chinxue crossed her arms. "Absolutely not. It's undignified." "Please, master," Feng begged. With a sigh, Luo Chinxue relented. "Fine. I'll buy the rest of the pills at 10 times their price and send them to my father's sect. That way, they'll be put to good use." Old Bai coughed. "You're seriously trying to talk about money with Yifeng?" Luo Chinxue froze, realizing her mistake. Blushing, she finally gave in. To persuade her, Yifeng even arranged the pills into a heart shape on a plate, decorating it with roses. "Master," he said dramatically, "for you." Luo Chinxue blushed even harder but reluctantly picked up a pill. With everyone pitching in, the final pills were consumed, and Yifeng's task was complete. Rewards: Yifeng earned 300 wasteful points for hiring the old men, 1,000 points for completing the task, and a bonus of 3 9-grade soul returning herbs and 5 9-grade gold and silkworm star shining stones. Luo Chinxue, meanwhile, sat off to the side, lamenting. "Old Bai, what's the point of me being a sect leader? I don't guide cultivation. I don't provide resources. I just clean up after Yifeng." Old Bai nodded gravely. "He's not really a disciple sect leader. He's more like the sect's money god. A wasteful money god." Luo Chinxue muttered, shaking her head. Yifeng turned to Old Xia and asked, "Do you know what the 9-leaf soul-returning herb is?" Unexpectedly, Old Xia's face lit up with excitement. "Of course. I'm very familiar with it. It's a legendary spiritual herb." He eagerly began explaining. "Each leaf of the soul-returning herb represents its medicinal potency. The more leaves, the more powerful it is. But I've never even seen a single-leaf soul-returning herb, let alone a 9-leaf one." He continued, "The soul-returning herb is the most essential ingredient for crafting the soul-returning life-saving pill. With this pill, even if someone has been dead for no more than 24 hours, and their soul has been annihilated, it can bring them back. It's incredibly powerful." Old Xia's tone grew more serious as he added, "The life-saving pill is the most urgently needed medicine for any tribulation-crossing realm expert. With its protection, even if someone fails to cross a tribulation and their physical body is destroyed, their soul will remain intact. They can recreate their body and come back to life. It's like being able to hop back and forth between the living world and the underworld." Pausing for a moment, Old Xia glanced at Yifeng with curiosity. "But why do you ask?" By now, Old Bai had started to sense something unusual. He turned to Old Xia and asked discreetly, "Do you know about bamboo demon grass, white spirit flower, and purple thunder fruit?" Old Xia nodded. "Yes, I know them. These spiritual plants are rare and valuable, but they can still be found in small quantities within major sections. They're not exceptionally extraordinary." Old Bai sighed deeply, then revealed, "Well, Yifeng here used those herbs for a foot soak yesterday." Old Xia froze in place, his jaw dropping in disbelief. "A foot soak?" he exclaimed. "That's outrageous. What a massive waste." While Old Xia struggled to process this, Old Bai turned to Yifeng, his expression stern. "You must have the 9-leaf soul-returning herb, don't you? Please, whatever you do, don't use it for a foot soak this time. It's a legendary spiritual herb." Yifeng murmured casually, "But I have 3 of them. Using one for a soak isn't a big deal, right?" Hearing this, Old Xia grew visibly anxious. "Absolutely not," he exclaimed, his voice urgent. "If you really have 3 9-leaf soul-returning herbs, please sell them to me. I'll give you everything I have. It's a life-saving herb. If you actually use it for a foot soak, it would be completely insane." Yifeng, unfazed by Old Xia's reaction, walked over to Luo Chinxue, pulled out a soul-returning herb, and handed it to her. "This is a token of respect from your disciple," he said calmly. Luo Chinxue froze, unsure of how to respond. Not only had Yifeng spent 100,000 top-grade spirit stones to become her direct disciple, but he'd also gifted her 400,000 more as a token of respect for accepting him. And now he was handing her a legendary spiritual herb. Her thoughts spun wildly. Am I just mooching off my disciple now? But then, unexpectedly, her thoughts took a risque turn. What if I have to offer my body to him in gratitude someday? She quickly shook her head, forcing herself back to reality. No, I can't accept this herb. But then another thought struck her. I'll need the life-saving pill for my tribulation as well. Meanwhile, Yifeng declared his plans for the remaining 2 herbs. One will go toward my foot soak, he said casually, and the other will go to Old Bai as long as he does some manual labor. Old Bai was overjoyed and immediately expressed his gratitude. However, Old Xia quickly interjected. Are you sure you only want manual labor? Consider me too. I'm quite strong, you know? Don't be fooled by my appearance. Old Xia declared, flexing his transformed, muscular physique. Yifeng blinked, startled by the display, while Old Bai immediately grew anxious and stepped forward to confront him. What are you trying to do? That soul-returning herb is mine. Don't even think about it. The two stared each other down, the tension building as both vied for the herb. Meanwhile, Wolfong, lying on the side and clearly having overeaten, listened to their argument and wondered if he should shamelessly ask his senior brother, Yifeng, if he could join in on the legendary foot soak. Old Xia, deciding to switch strategies, suddenly turned toward Luo Qinxue. Invoking a historical reference, he said, in ancient times, there was Lu Fengxian who paid respects to his adoptive father. Now, there's Xia Tanya pledging allegiance. Luo Qinxue blinked, utterly confused. Old Xia stood tall, clearing his throat. Yes, I've decided. I want to join the Star Soul sect. What? Luo Qinxue was flabbergasted. Old Xia nodded solemnly. I've wandered for half my life, and I deeply regret never joining a sect. If you, Sect Master Luo, don't mind, may I join your sect as an honorary elder? You're a 9th grade alchemist and a mighty tribulation crossing realm expert, Luo Qinxue said, struggling to process his words. And your Tanya auction house is spread all over the Xiantian continent. Are you sure you want to join our modest Star Soul sect? I'm sure, Old Xia affirmed, his tone unwavering. To ensure his entry, he even brought up a trump card. Little girl, I held you when you were a baby. If you refuse me, I'll go straight to your father. Luo Qinxue's mouth opened and closed, utterly speechless. Old Xia had his reasons, of course. Seeing Yifeng casually gift and use legendary herbs made it clear the young man had an unimaginable wealth of treasures. If Old Xia didn't establish a relationship now, he might miss out on untold opportunities in the future. Luo Qinxue asked cautiously, but what about the auction house? Old Xia. Oh, I'll leave it to my good-for-nothing son, Old Xia replied dismissively. Old Bai, watching this unfold, sighed in resignation. I admit defeat, Old Xia. I can't compete with your audacity. Smirking, Old Xia replied smugly, I love that look on your face when you can't stand me but can't do anything about it. As for the soul-returning herb, Old Xia added with a sly grin. That'll depend on everyone's performance from now on. This made Luo Qinxue so mad she almost spat blood. She'd never even wanted to expand her sect. First, she ended up with 2 unexpected disciples, and now a 9th grade alchemist? How was she supposed to focus on cultivation and ascend to the higher realm to seek revenge? At that moment, Yifeng, ever the instigator, suddenly asked, by the way, does anyone know about the gold and silkworm star shining stone? The room fell silent for a beat before Old Bai, Old Xia, and Luo Qinxue exclaimed in unison. You have a gold and silkworm star shining stone? Startled by their reactions, Yifeng quickly denied it. I don't have it. I was just asking. But the 3 of them weren't convinced they knew his style. He definitely had the stone. Wolfong, watching this unfold, couldn't hold back his curiosity. Senior brother, where are you even getting all these treasures from? Before anyone could press Yifeng further, Luo Qinxue received a notification. There was an issue back at the sect, and they needed to return immediately. It turned out that her father, Luo Wuming, had arrived with important matters to discuss. However, Luo Qinxue knew the real reason he was here to inspect the progress of her sect. A few hours later, upon their return to the Star Soul sect, they were greeted by Luo Wuming, whose expression was one of deep disappointment. "You've greatly disappointed me," he said, his tone sharp. Luo Qinshua's heart sank. Something was clearly wrong. "Father," she began cautiously. Luo Wuming let out a frustrated sigh and began venting. "It was the recruitment day for the Star Soul sect recently. I wanted to visit during the celebrations, but there wasn't even anyone to serve me tea. I prepared so many gifts and waited the whole day without seeing anyone. If I hadn't sent you a message, I'd probably still be waiting there now." Luo Qinshui was mortified. Trying to salvage the situation, she quickly introduced Ifeng and Wolfong as her disciples. Luo Wuming raised an eyebrow. "I didn't take any disciples," he said skeptically. "These two are my disciples," Luo Qinshui clarified, feeling slightly relieved to have them as a shield. She quickly added, "Please don't be upset, father. I even took Ifeng as my direct disciple." Her father looked at her, clearly shocked. Luo Wuming knew his daughter well. She had never shown concern for anything before. For her to take on a direct disciple was unheard of. He inspected Ifeng closely. "How's his spiritual root?" he asked. "He has no spiritual root," Luo Qinshui replied calmly. "What about his innate talent?" Luo Wuming pressed. "He has none," she said flatly. Luo Wuming's bewildered expression grew as he finally asked, "Then what on earth made him your direct disciple?" Stepping forward, Ifeng explained matter-of-factly, "I bought the position with 500,000 high-quality spirit stones." Luo Wuming was utterly flabbergasted. "Is that even possible? This is just too casual. Daughter, if you needed money, you could have just asked me. There was no need to do this." Meanwhile, Old Bai and Old Xia were both vying for Ifeng's favor. Old Xia even pulled out a stool for Ifeng to sit on, while Old Bai fumed silently. Old Bai finally snapped, "Old Xia, have you completely forgotten martial etiquette?" Not to be outdone, Old Bai stepped forward and offered Ifeng a massage, even serving him tea. Watching this absurd display, Luo Wuming was utterly confused. "Bai Tianhong, aren't you an elder of my Star Extreme sect? And Xia Tanya, what are you doing in my daughter's sect?" After a half-hour-long explanation, Luo Wuming finally understood everything: the 9-pattern clear mysterious pills, the 9-leaf soul-returning herb, and more. Amazed, he exclaimed, "Truly, he's a god of wealth not just for my daughter's Star Soul sect, but even for my own Star Extreme sect. I treat him with reverence, too." Old Bai nodded in agreement. He even suspected that Ifeng might hail from a certain special place. However, Luo Wuming quickly interrupted, "Don't mention that place." He looked at his daughter and softened. "As long as you're all fine, I'm content. I just came to see how you're doing." That evening, as Ifeng rested, Wolfong excitedly brought a basin of foot-soaking water. Seeing this, Ifeng raised an eyebrow knowingly. "You want to soak your feet too?" Wolfong scratched his head nervously. "Senior brother, you go first. I'll soak mine after you're done." Ifeng chuckled. "I'm not a stingy person. Bring another basin of water. Let's split the 9-leaf soul-returning herb in half and each have a share." Hearing this, Wolfong was moved to tears. "Senior brother, you're so good to me." What they didn't realize was that Old Bai and Old Xia were secretly watching everything unfold from the rooftop. When they saw Ifeng using the precious 9-leaf soul-returning herb to soak his feet, Old Xia felt his heart shatter into pieces. A day had passed since Ifeng's infamous foot soak, and the effects of the legendary herb were astonishing. Even from such casual usage, Ifeng's body and soul were significantly purified. As a result, he now had a total of 2,510 wasteful points. Meanwhile, today's wasteful product had been refreshed. 10,000 fragments of Underworld sword intent. Curious and unfamiliar with their use, Ifeng took one fragment out for testing. To experiment, he called over Little Yellow, placing the fragment on the dog's forehead. Immediately, a gust of wind surged as the idea of the Underworld sword intent emerged in Little Yellow's mind. From the outside, however, nothing looked out of the ordinary. Ifeng tilted his head, disappointed by the lack of any spectacular effects. Still, with his years of experience as a bookworm, he could tell from the name alone that this was likely a valuable item. He asked the system if he could use the wasteful product himself, but the system flatly rejected him. If Ifeng wanted to use it personally, a significant number of his wasteful points would be deducted. Yifeng sighed in frustration. Using it himself was off the table, and he couldn't exactly ask for help either. What if someone else took the fragments and didn't return them? That would be disastrous. Thinking this, he hugged Little Yellow and returned to his room. Elsewhere, Luo Wuming was suggesting to Luo Qinxue that Yifeng and Wolfong head to the Heavenly Dao battlefield to gain experience. Luo Qinxue was hesitant. While she trusted Yifeng to some extent, she was far more concerned about Wolfang's safety. Sensing her worry, Luo Wuming assured her, "Don't worry, I'll send a few inner disciples from the Star Extreme sect to accompany them." However, he couldn't help but ask, "Why do you have so much faith in Yifeng? He has a lot of treasures, sure, but isn't he just a mortal? In the Heavenly Dao battlefield, even the weakest cultivator or beast could easily kill him." Luo Chanxue clarified, "While it's true that he lacks spiritual roots, Yifeng has already cultivated to the 9th peak of the Qi activation realm. His spirit sea is 20 times larger than mine." Luo Wuming's jaw dropped in disbelief. What? He couldn't believe it. Luo Chenxue herself held the Star Extreme sect's record for the largest spirit sea. And yet here was a mortal without spiritual roots whose spirit sea dwarfed hers by such a staggering margin. Suddenly, a powerful surge of sword intent erupted nearby, interrupting their conversation. The overwhelming energy drew the attention of both Luo Wuming and Luo Qinxue, as well as Wolfong and Old Xia. Thinking that an expert wielding underworld sword intent was attacking, they rushed toward the source, fully prepared to fight. However, when they arrived, they were greeted with an entirely different sight. Yifeng was casually playing frisbee with Little Yellow, who was the one emanating the powerful sword intent. Luo Wuming, Luo Qinxue, and the others stood frozen in shock. The one possessing underworld sword intent was a dog. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they wouldn't have believed it. Noticing their presence, Yifeng turned to them, puzzled. "Why are you all here?" Luo Chanxue ignored his question and instead demanded, "What's going on?" Did Little Yellow comprehend the underworld sword intent on his own? Yifeng waved her off. "How is that possible? He's way too dumb to figure it out himself. I just had some fragments of underworld sword intent, so I used them on him." Hearing this, everyone was dumbfounded. Such a waste. Both Luo Qinxue and Old Xia glared at Yifeng as if they were ready to lecture him. Seeing their reactions, Yifeng grew a bit nervous. Luo Chanxue explained in a cold tone, "The underworld sword intent is incredibly rare, even in the Heavenly Dao battlefield. Obtaining it is nearly impossible. It all depends on one's luck. Yet you casually used such precious fragments on a dog? Even if you're being wasteful, you should at least know your limits." Yifeng, trying to shift the conversation, curiously asked, "What exactly is the Heavenly Dao battlefield?" Luo Qinxue sighed and explained, "The Xiantian continent is just one of many lower realms. Every lower realm has access to the Heavenly Dao battlefield, and based on one's strength, they're sent to different areas. No one knows exactly how the battlefield came to be, but it's filled with cultivation resources, legacies, treasures, and more. However, it's also incredibly dangerous. Apart from threats from beings of other dimensions, the native beasts inside are extremely powerful. It's not uncommon for someone to lose their life there." After hearing this, Yifeng's system issued a new mission. Go to the second layer of the Heavenly Dao battlefield and slay 100 beasts at the 9th peak of the Qi activation realm. Seeing the reward, a massive number of wasteful points, Yifeng's interest was piqued. However, he hesitated. He had plenty of spiritual power but lacked martial skills and combat experience. What should he do? At that moment, Luo Wuming asked Yifeng, "How many fragments of underworld sword intent did you use on the dog?" Yifeng hesitated before answering, "Not many. Just about 10,000 pieces." The moment those words left his mouth, Luo Wuming, Luo Qinxue, Old Bai, and Old Xia all turned to stare at him fiercely. They looked as though they wanted to tear him apart on the spot. 10,000 pieces? Luo Wuming's voice was filled with disbelief. "You're insanely wasteful. Something so precious, something everyone desires, and you gave it all to a dog." Yifeng defended himself sheepishly. "I'm sorry," but in his heart he thought smugly, "I'd do it again if I had the chance." Sensing that Luo Chinxue was on the verge of losing control and slapping him to death, Luo Wuming stepped in. "Chenxue, let me take him away before you do something you'll regret." Grabbing Yifeng, Luo Wuming led him off. "Where are we going?" Yifeng asked curiously. Star Soul sect was only established for Chenxue to hone her temperament, Luo Wuming explained. The real sect backing her is the Star Extreme sect. At that moment, Luo Wuming was leading Yifeng toward the Star Extreme sect, planning for him to join the senior brothers there. As they made their way through the Heavenly Dao battlefield, Yifeng seized an opportunity to ask, "Master, is the Star Extreme sect powerful? Do they need any assistance? Are the sect members well-fed? Perhaps I could gift everyone some spiritual stones to spend." The more Yifeng spoke, the more irritated Luo Wuming became. Finally, he snapped, spinning around to glare at him. "Shut up. Our Star Extreme sect is a holy land, very wealthy, and doesn't need your concern." That night, they stopped at an inn. Yifeng, excited for what the next day might bring, eagerly looked forward to seeing what extravagant item he could spend his resources on. The following morning, as soon as he woke, Yifeng hastily opened his system. Today's wasteful item was displayed: 100,000 high-grade spiritual stones. Relieved, he thought that shouldn't be too hard to spend. Next, Yifeng decided to try drawing a martial skill. Specifying an upper-tier human-level martial skill, he spent 100 wasteful points and obtained the Fire Dragon Fist technique. Feeling unusually lucky, Yifeng smiled. This kind of skill usually took him several tries to draw. But his smile froze moments later when the system revealed a problem. The Fire Dragon Fist required fire elemental spiritual energy to activate. Panic set in. Where am I supposed to find fire elemental spiritual energy? Yifeng thought, frustrated by his lack of spiritual roots. Sensing his plight, the system suggested transforming his existing spiritual energy into a fire attribute. To his surprise, Yifeng realized he could transform his spiritual energy into any elemental attribute. Intrigued, he prepared to test out the power of the Fire Dragon Fist. However, before he could begin, Luo Wuming's voice rang out. "Yifeng, it's time to move." Reluctantly, Yifeng abandoned his test and joined Luo Wuming for the journey. As they traveled, Yifeng began throwing spiritual stones into the air from his flying sword, scattering them like rain over the lands below. Luo Wuming, flying ahead, turned back in disbelief. "Yifeng, what are you doing?" Yifeng responded with a straight face. "I'm bestowing gifts from the sky, creating windfalls for the lucky." Visibly irritated, Luo Wuming snapped, "Even if you have a lot, you shouldn't be this wasteful. One day, when you have nothing left, you'll regret it." Suddenly serious, Yifeng replied, "Master, do you know what the most painful thing in life is? For someone devoted to swordsmanship, it's dying without comprehending the true essence of the sword. For an alchemist, it's dying without creating a legendary elixir. For a formation master, it's never crafting the ultimate formation before death. So for me, the most painful thing would be to die with money unspent." And with that, Yifeng continued tossing spiritual stones into the air as they traveled. Before long, they arrived at the Star Extreme sect. Compared to the desolate Star Soul sect, the Star Extreme sect was the epitome of luxury, brimming with resources and grandeur. After their arrival, Luo Wuming approached Manager Song, entrusting Yifeng to his care. "In a few days," he explained, "Yifeng will join the sect disciples heading to the Heavenly Dao battlefield." With that, he departed swiftly, leaving Yifeng behind. Yifeng greeted Manager Song warmly. "I'll be relying on your care and guidance, Manager Song," he said, all smiles. While waiting for his accommodations to be arranged, Yifeng overheard a commotion nearby. Curious, he inquired about it. Manager Song explained, "Today is the day for the outer sect and inner sect disciples competition." Hearing this, Yifeng was intrigued and asked if he could watch the matches. At that exact moment, the system issued him a new mission: take over a platform and defeat 100 opponents of the same realm. Success would reward him with 500 wasteful points, while failure would cost him the same amount. Excited by the challenge, Yifeng's eyes lit up. Without hesitation, he made his way to the battle platforms and claimed an empty one for himself. Seeing this, the Star Extreme sect disciples were puzzled. They could tell Yifeng wasn't one of them, and some speculated he might be from another sect, here to challenge them. Stepping onto the platform, Yifeng announced confidently, "I am at the pinnacle of the Qi activation realm's 9th stage and the direct disciple of Luo Chenxue. Today, I'm here to hold this platform, and I hope my fellow disciples will show me some consideration." The crowd was stunned. "The Sacred Lady's direct disciple?" They murmured in astonishment. Moments later, a disciple named Men Yang stepped forward. From the crowd's reaction, it was clear Men Yang had a strong reputation. With a proud smile, Men Yang asked, "I reached the pinnacle of the Qi activation realm's 9th stage in just 3 years. How long did it take you, brother?" Yifeng replied casually, "Not long at all. From the opening of my spirit sea to its pinnacle, it took me about 10 minutes. From there to the pinnacle of the Qi activation realm's 9th stage, perhaps a little over 20 minutes. Men Yang froze, utterly dumbfounded. "What the hell are you talking about? Are you mocking me?" Yifeng's words sent waves of disbelief through the crowd. None of the disciples believed him. Breaking through so many realms in just over 20 minutes? That was absurd. Some joked that they spent more time in the restroom than that. Many scoffed, dismissing Yifeng as arrogant. Some even questioned whether someone so brazen was worthy of being the Sacred Lady's direct disciple. But Yifeng paid no heed to their doubts. "Believe it or not," he said lightly. Men Yang, unwilling to let the matter go, lunged forward to launch the first attack. This gave Yifeng the perfect opportunity to test his fire dragon fist. In an instant, a fiery apparition of a dragon materialized, stunning everyone watching. Men Yang, in particular, was shocked by the sudden display of power. With no chance to escape, Men Yang summoned his long sword and slashed at the fiery dragon. A massive disturbance erupted across the dueling platform, even affecting the bystanders. But no matter what Men Yang tried, he couldn't withstand Yifeng's overwhelming surge of spiritual energy. A disciple in the crowd pointed and exclaimed, "The fiery dragon hasn't disappeared, it's still chasing him." Panicking, Men Yang shouted, "How the hell do you even fight this? I want to go home to my mom." Meanwhile, Yifeng stood relaxed on the platform, striking what he thought was a cool pose. With a smirk, he chanted, "Fire Dragon Fist," and just like that, multiple fiery dragons manifested, each more dazzling than the last. As fiery apparitions emerged, all glaring ominously at Men Yang, the terrified disciple cried out, "Where did this monster come from?" In sheer panic, Men Yang decisively jumped off the platform, admitting defeat without hesitation. Yifeng, brimming with the confidence of a martial arts master, struck a heroic pose and declared, "Who's next? I want to defeat 100. At that moment, Yifeng was having the time of his life, reveling in the euphoria of battle. With his seemingly infinite spiritual energy, he recklessly deployed the Fire Dragon Fist again and again, resulting in massive explosions across the arena. The chaos frightened all the disciples, sending them fleeing in terror. Watching this, Manager Song buried his face in his hands and groaned, "I shouldn't have brought this guy here." He couldn't help but lament the extensive damage to the sect's properties. But Yifeng couldn't have cared less about Manager Song's concerns. Caught up in the thrill of a fantasy world come to life, he was completely immersed in his battle frenzy. Realizing the situation was spiraling out of control, Manager Song immediately ordered over 200 disciples, all at the 9th peak of the Qi activation realm, to subdue Yifeng. The disciples were stunned. "Is this guy really planning to take on over 200 of us?" One muttered in disbelief. Another chimed in, "No wonder the Sacred Lady took him as her direct disciple. He's terrifyingly powerful. If he wins this battle, he'll surely secure a place in the dragon ranking in the future." Others eagerly anticipated the outcome, thinking if he wins, he'll become famous overnight. But if he loses, he'll be utterly humiliated. Manager Song took the lead, commanding the disciples to raise a spiritual barrier. A massive energy shield materialized in front of them, shimmering with power. Yifeng's eyes widened. "They can even do that?" he muttered in surprise. "Even though I have abundant spiritual energy, I don't think I can break that with just my human-level martial art technique." Determined, Yifeng began drawing more powerful martial techniques from his system. Spending 700 wasteful points, he acquired the 9 Radiance Thunder Lotus, an Earth-level superior martial technique. Still not satisfied, he drew again. This time, after expending 900 points, he obtained the Water Dragon chant. Even then, Yifeng felt it wasn't enough. After one more draw, costing another 700 points, he acquired the Wind Whirls, Raging Sands technique. Now armed with techniques from multiple elements, Yifeng finally felt ready. He initiated his assault with the 9 Radiance Thunder Lotus. In an instant, a radiant lotus-shaped apparition materialized overhead, its thunderous energy crackling in the air. Before the disciples could recover from their shock, Yifeng unleashed the Water Dragon chant, summoning a powerful water dragon apparition. The disciples panicked. "What kind of monster is he?" one shouted. "He possesses not only the fire element but also thunder and water. That means he has 3 spiritual roots." But before they could process this, Yifeng struck again, unleashing the Wind Whirls, Raging Sands technique. The wind attribute attack merged with the other techniques, creating a devastating elemental combination. The overwhelming force of the combined techniques was directed straight at the spiritual barrier. Chaos erupted among the disciples as they realized they couldn't fend off such an attack. Manager Song stood frozen, dumbfounded. Not just 3 spiritual roots. Could he actually possess 4 spiritual roots? Then, Yifeng shocked everyone yet again by unleashing another thunder attribute technique. The protective barrier, which had been formed by 200 disciples, shattered under the onslaught. Letting out a triumphant laugh, Yifeng stood victorious as all 200 disciples voluntarily surrendered, realizing they stood no chance against him. Even the overseer, hovering midair, was left speechless. Initially, he had wanted to suppress Yifeng's momentum, but now, seeing Yifeng's seemingly limitless spiritual energy and his mastery of several Earth-level superior martial techniques, the overseer couldn't help but think, this young man will surely rank in the top 10 of the dragon ranking in the future. But Yifeng wasn't done. "Who else dares to challenge me?" he taunted, looking around. The disciples were utterly flabbergasted, wondering how he still had so much energy left. Meanwhile, inside the sect's grand hall, Luo Wuming had summoned several core disciples. The disciples looked puzzled, unsure of why they had been gathered so suddenly. Luo Wuming stepped forward and began explaining, "I wanted to inform you that soon, you will have a new junior disciple. However, he is currently only at the 9th peak of the Qi activation realm. You'll need to take extra care of him." At this, the room erupted in animated discussions. "Our Star Extreme sect is one of the top sects on the Xiantian continent," one disciple exclaimed. "To become a core disciple, one must have exceptional talent, comprehension, and spiritual roots." Another, Qin Haoyu, asked skeptically, "Master Luo, can you tell us about the exceptional qualities of this new junior disciple?" Luo Wuming sighed and spread his hands. "All you need to remember is that he is very rich, extremely rich, and he spends a lot, excessively so." The room fell silent, the disciples staring in disbelief. "What? That's considered a special quality?" One blurted out. "No matter how rich he is, he couldn't possibly be wealthier than our sect, right?" Another muttered, "Master, you must be joking with us." But Luo Wuming wasn't joking. "You'll understand after spending some time with him," he said with resignation. "How can anyone compare to him?" Finally, the group couldn't hold back and turned to Luo Wuming, their voices tinged with a mix of confusion and accusation. "Sect Master, are you sure this is the same junior disciple you said had no special qualities?" Luo Wuming was silent for a moment, feeling cornered. Truthfully, he hadn't been aware of the extent of Yifeng's capabilities. He sighed, unsure of how to respond. Qin Haoyu, one of the core disciples, inquired, "Manager Song, where did the junior disciple go?" Manager Song replied, "He went back to his residence in the Inner Peaks, 111th courtyard." Hearing this, the core disciples couldn't hold back any longer. They hurried off to meet this remarkable junior disciple, leaving Luo Wuming standing behind. Manager Song, ever the gossip, couldn't resist asking Luo Wuming, "Sect Master, Are you planning to accept Yifeng as the sixth core disciple of the sect? Hearing this, Luo Wuming's face darkened, and he warned sternly, Manager Song, you must not inform the three ancestral elders about this. Yifeng is my daughter's personal disciple, and no one can take him away. Manager Song, spreading his hands in a helpless gesture, replied, even if I don't tell them, it's pointless. Yifeng's achievements have already spread throughout the sect. Not just the three ancestral elders, but even the four great ancestral elders already know. Luo Wuming sighed heavily, muttering, this is going to be troublesome. Let's see how the kid decides. Thanks for watching, guys. Comment Flamingo and subscribe for the next part.